Today I'm interviewing Louise West, just to get a peek into the creative mind behind the business. I want you to tell me, how did you start with bobbin lace making?
I first saw somebody demonstrating it at an event. I can't even remember where the event was. Thought it looked fascinating. So I looked for a course, and I found a course at Deman College, which was the old WI college, and this was back in 1992. I went on a 5-day course, came back absolutely totally hooked, and I haven't stopped since. It just felt right.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't put the bobbins down after that.
Yeah, it became your passion. That's wonderful.
It did, yes, yeah. Very much hooked on that 1-week course.
Yeah.
That I just wanted to do more all the time.
Yeah, and never stopped since.
No, I haven't, no.
Can you tell me what laces you first made when you first started?
Well, I started off with torsion, as most lace makers do in this country. And I worked on torsion for a year, and I got through a lot of patterns in that time. And I won't say I lost interest, but I felt that there was more to it, more available. So I went back the following year, in 1993, back to Margaret Tite at Deman College, and had a go at books. And I found books challenging in a lot of ways, and it still is challenging today by comparison with other laces. Didn't feel as natural. The following year I saw her, and she suggested I had a go at Bedfordshire. And I had a go at Bedfordshire and absolutely hated it.
Oh no.
Because the pattern she put me on just wasn't the correct pattern to start a beginner on, with hindsight. And I would never start a beginner on Bedfordshire on what she started me with. So I didn't touch it again for another year. Went back the year after that to her again. She said, I really think you ought to have another go. And she put me on an edging, which was a Harry Armstrong design. And the rest is history. I just got so hooked in the Bedfordshire at that. Because it was an edging, it gave me practice that repeats. And it got me into doing the leaf tallies and the trails and the crossing trails and all sorts of things like that. Because it was repetitive, I actually was able to understand it a lot more. And I was hooked on Bedfordshire. And again, I haven't stopped since. And Bedfordshire now is my passion and the one I generally focus on most.
Hi Louise. How did you progress from Deman College? How did you get on from there on?
After Deman College, I went to Margaret at a course in Leicester, a weekend course on an annual basis with Doreen Bull. And I then met Anita Wilkinson, who was a real inspiration to me as well. And I started going to her evening class. And Anita had been taught by Margaret for a lot of her career. And so Margaret's traits and characteristics came through in Anita's designing. And I went to evening class with Anita until she stopped teaching. And I also did day workshops with her and weekend courses, and everywhere Anita taught I went to classes with her. And I focused a lot on Bedfordshire, but I also carried on with some of the books point to develop it, because books and beds do work alongside each other quite nicely and both feed into each other.
What progressed your hobby, shall we say, into something more than a hobby?
Well, in 1995 I had a spinal injury, and I had 9 years waiting for surgery where I wasn't able to work, and so I had to find something to occupy my mind and keep me sane, in inverted commas. And lace making was something that I could do. It was something that was a very enabling pastime, occupied my mind, took my mind off the pain that I was in. And I focused on lace for 9 years and very little else. And when you have an intense period of study like that, then you can progress quite quickly. I still went on evening classes and did what courses I could, and just started designing, and everything progressed from there. And it was through great support of Barbara Underwood, Margaret Tite and Anita Wilkinson that were the 3 biggest influences of my lace making that I progressed to where I am now.
So they all are different characters? Were they all
very much so, yes, very much so. They were all fantastic teachers, and they all had their own ways of teaching different things, but I think lace makers do benefit from seeing different teachers, because the way one teacher will explain something might be not quite understood, but then a different teacher will put it in a different way or show you a slightly different way, and that will benefit the lace maker and help you understand and grow your knowledge. So it does benefit everybody to visit different teachers, either through books, online courses or in-person classes.
What can you tell me about Thomas Lester?
Well, Thomas Lester I could talk to you about for quite some time, so I'll just go in briefly. Thomas Lester was a designer from the 1850s onwards, the second half of the 19th century, and he changed the face of lace in life today. He developed designs which were Art Nouveau in style, very free-flowing, very realistic looking flowers, from a period of Bucks Point that was, you'd have a flower in Bucks Point but it wouldn't represent very often a real flower. It was just a daisy looking flower but not something that really represented the actual plant. And Thomas Lester put plants into his lace designs and animals that were realistic and you can recognise as plants today. I mean, there's a gloxinia, there's lilies, there's all sorts of ferns in there that you can say, yes, that is a lily, that is a gloxinia. And the Victorian fad of wanting to wear animals round their necks, he put animals into the lace because that was their craze for wearing animals and flora and fauna on their different garments. And his designs of eagles, giraffes and parrots and all those sort of things are just really groundbreaking. Very, very intricate to work. I was looking at some of the photographs with some students yesterday and they are absolutely amazing. You never cease to be amazed. Even the grounds are so complicated on some of the big pieces. But hopefully they will inspire some of the designs in my advanced book that is in progress.
After you'd been making lace for, like, as a hobby, how did you actually go into make it more than a hobby?
It was a bit of a chain of events really. It wasn't, I'd always known I'd wanted to teach at some point in the future. And a very dear friend gave up a class in Nottingham and I took over the class at the end of my BA and it snowballed from there. I went on to do a Masters at University in Contemporary Lace and during that time I took on a studio, I rented a studio to be able to do the big scale work I wanted. And I realised if I ran one workshop a month it would pay for the studio because it was on very much reduced rent, it was a university incubation unit. So I ran a workshop a month, I got people in there, and then at the end of the Masters it snowballed. People wanted more classes, I put on weekend courses, I even did a 1 week course at one point. And I went full time with the business. And it was a case of being open to opportunities that you never know where things are going to lead. And they very often do lead to areas that you never expect.
Yeah. When did you start designing?
I think the earliest designing will probably be late 90s. So I've been doing lace maybe 7 or 8 years when I started. And I was on a summer school with Barbara Underwood and said, I fancy having a go at some designing. And I can't even remember what the first piece was. I think it was, I took an end of a lappet and just made it into a motif, the first one. It was quite pretty, but when I look back at it now, it was all hand drawn and not very accurate. So the first pieces you make or design are never perfect. And I could probably do a better job of it now if I redrafted it now. Even if I was drawing it on paper, it would certainly be a lot neater than I was then. But that sparked off the ideas and what I wanted to do with lace and designing. So many designs in my head that I can't put onto paper at the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
And that of course led into when I did the City and Guilds. I was doing a lot more designing then with City and Guilds. Some of them haven't seen the light of day since, but one I have designed into an edging, which is currently being worked by a student to hopefully publish. And that came out of an edging that I took elements from Thomas Lester, put into an edging, but worked very large scale with colour. So it isn't really something I would want to do again, but I've reduced it now down to a normal sort of normal Bedfordshire thickness threads, and it's working very well. I
Right.
understand. I haven't seen it recently
Oh,
from
that's good.
her, but hopefully she'll get back to it one day.
That'd be good. Yeah, yeah. Would you look back on your old work at your City and Guilds and your other courses? And
I
how
often,
it goes?
I often get the City and Guilds out because
Mm.
you had to work so many samples of different laces
Yeah.
and research so much stuff in it that, yeah, it's still interesting to look back on.
Yeah.
And I also did the Lace Guild assessments before the City and Guilds,
Mm.
which again, there's lots of work in there that I can revisit and reuse. Some of it I have done and others and probably wouldn't do, but there's still stuff in there I could revisit.
Yeah.
Not enough time in this lifetime.
You want some more books, Louise? Come on.
2 more books are in progress, but they are very slow progress at the moment with things that are happening at home.
Yeah. What was it like as a mature student at university?
Very different.
Yeah.
I went to university back in 2006, having done the City and Guilds. I have to have a bit of a backstory here. I did the City and Guilds at Lichfield, and the first part 1, each part's supposed to take 2 years. Part 1 I did in 2 years, and there's a lot of work in it. For anybody out there that's done City and Guilds, they know the volume of work. No longer available today, unfortunately, which is a great shame because it was a good course. And I completed it in 2 years, and then I went on to do part 2, which again was a 2-year course. And 3 weeks into the course, they said, if you want to finish it, you've got to do it in 1 academic year instead of 2 full years.
Yeah.
So I sat and thought about it for a week and went back the following week and said, yeah, all right, then I'll give it a go. Because I realised that if I didn't manage to do it, I would still be no worse off than if I hadn't tried.
Exactly.
And I always rise to challenges whenever possible. So I went and gave it a go, and I completed it in the 9 months, almost 10 months that it was available. And at the end of that, I realised I'd been working full time on lace. You know, I was doing it every day of the week for that period, just to get the volume of work done. The teacher, unfortunately, was off sick for 2 or 3 months of the period as well, just to add to the challenge. And I didn't know what to do next. And the local paper ran a series of articles on the university and featured textile design. So I thought, I wonder what's involved. I went along to see them, overwhelmed with their enthusiasm, and walked out having enrolled 3 hours later, which my husband was a little bit gobsmacked at. He didn't quite know what he'd let himself in for. But I went, that was the August, and I started the following month in the September. It was challenging, but as I say, I love challenges, and it was great fun as well. The young students were a little bit in awe, maybe, didn't mix particularly well at the start, but they soon settled down and accepted me, and you know, we got on pretty well. It did have its challenges with getting the commission on week 10 of the first year for the building with Nottingham Contemporary, which added to the workload significantly. But I got through it, and you know, came out at the end of it to go back and do another 3 years doing a master's. I couldn't have been put off too much, but it was having really, really good staff. I mean, they say university changes your life, and it certainly did, but in a very positive way. Not just the work and the experience, but giving you the confidence to go out there and meet the challenges head on. Because prior to that, having been through spinal surgery, confidence was at an all-time low, and it did give me the confidence to go out and start a business. Who knew you could do that after a university course? You know, it's just amazing the doors it opens. You just don't know where things are going to lead.
Tell me a bit more about Nottingham Contemporary. How did you get involved in that?
It came through the Nottingham Bob and Lace Society. The architects approached the museum where the lace was being held at the time, which was the Nottingham Costume Museum, which unfortunately is no longer there. They contacted Nottingham Bob and Lace Society, and they put forward a couple of us for interview. And went through interview, and I got the job to do the design for it. And I had ended up, initially they wanted it making in handmade lace, but then we converted it to a design project on the computer, and we did the to design digitally. The design was created, engraved into a MDF board, which was sent to Germany for the moulds to be made, and then the design coats the entire building. 93 concrete panels, up to 11 metres long and 11 tonnes of concrete in each panel. So it's very much a big experience, and it opened just after I graduated in, I think it was November 2009, and the concrete stays on the building ever since. So it's quite an experience to do, very big challenge, never used Photoshop before, so it was very much a crash course in how to do that. But really positive experience, and one that will never be forgotten. And that really started the thought of running my own business, because if I could do that, what else could I do?
Thanks for that, Louise. And if you'd like to ask Louise some questions, please ask them about here. Any kind of questions, whether it's business related, textile related, lace related, anything you like, she'll answer it. Just fire away. If you're familiar with Nottingham, go and see the Nottingham Contemporary. Brilliant building. Thank you.
And don't forget to subscribe, so when you've asked questions, you can hear the answers when they're actually posted. Thanks for watching.